Welcome back, guys. Mel here from Mel's Motors. As you can see, I've got my Suzuki GSXR 600 back there. I did a video last year where I prepped the bike as we were going over to Almeria for 4 days on track. Well, that was in 2022. It's 2023 now, so we're doing the same thing again. I need to prep the bike. I did a video last year, about 6 months ago. I had this at Castle Combe and it overheated on me. Thankfully no damage, but it's something we need to address. I need to get some tyres on there, service, valve clearance check. So stick around, we'll go through the whole thing together. Okay, got the bike on the paddock stands, off the ground, tyres are ready to be done. I need to address the engine. I've got a new thermostat for it, so I'm hoping that's just a problem. This is the first time I'm working up here. We are upstairs. If you're wondering how this thing got up here, obviously a forklift was involved, but it wasn't just a forklift, it was more to that. There's a video of how I got this bike up here. I'll put a link at the bottom so you can have a look at that. Anyway, back to the bike. We built this upstairs last year. There is a video on that as well, how we did it. It's still chaotic up here. Unfortunately, my dad passed away last year, and he was a mechanic. I was his apprentice, and my son eventually became my apprentice. There's a lot of his stuff up here, so it is chaos. We're still working on it, still haven't finished carpeting in here. We also built the woodworking room up there, which is another video. So I've cleared an area. Again, stuff everywhere, but it's a quiet place. I'm not hugging a ramp downstairs for work, so I can quietly get on with it up here, and if I have to be pulled away and do other stuff, then at least no one's coming up here to disturb anything or move stuff. I'm not going to do the tyres straight away. I'm going to address the engine first. That's the most important bit. I've got these Continentals on here. They're Race Attacks. They're actually really good tyres, but in Almeria, I got 300 miles out of a rear tyre, which was ludicrous. I've got new Metzeler TD slicks to go on this now. First time I've been on Metzelers, so we're going to see how they fare. Feedback I've had from some of the other guys that I ride with is they're very grippy and they seem to last quite well for what they are. First things first, tank off, get the airbox off so I can get access to the thermostat. So the radiator's out. I didn't need to take it out, but as I'm doing the thermostat, I thought it'd be a good idea to take it off, flush out all the old coolant. I'm going to do valve clearance check on this as well, so it gives me easy access there, one to undo the bolts, and secondly to check the valve clearances on the exhaust side. The only thing I've done to this since I've owned it is an oil and filter change, which is what I did last year, but now I'm going to give it a full service, new spark plugs and all sorts. The air filter I took out, it's been a while since that came out, so it's, I don't know if you can see that, it's pretty disgusting in there. If I just tap it, you can see all the bugs and stuff in there. It's not very clear, but the plugs weren't too bad. There's still life left in them, but I'm going to change them anyway. The thermostat is buried down there, just under the throttle bodies. Let's just be on that plug in there, so it's reasonably easy to get to. Okay, cam covers off. You don't normally have to strip this much to get cam covers off. The reason I took the radiator off because I wanted to flush it out anyway. You can see that's quite weird looking, that's antifreeze. I noticed down there that there was some solder droppings. I wasn't sure where that came from, to be fair. But now that I've got this apart, I can see there's been a wire soldered and it's now actually broken. And there's a link wire, which is this one here, which I'm sure is for the power commander, which was spliced into this line, so I need to repair that now and put that back on. It's also given me great access to get the thermostat in as well. The ports look really clean. The injectors are in there, as you can see, just about that round circle there. So that's the injector, so you get a lot of port wash, which keeps those reasonably clean. So I'm going to do the valve clearances now. We'll check them first. If they need doing, it's going to escalate the work by quite a bit, because you've got to take the timing chain off, camshafts out to readjust the shims on there. So I'm hoping they're going to be within tolerance. Just taking this cover off and the end cap, so I can get a 14mm socket in there. This is the crank bolt, so I can turn the engine over, so I can check the valve clearances. Just on my tech data, so I've got my bike loaded up there, and we can see what the valve clearances are. 0.8 to 18 cold on the inlet side, and exhaust is 18 to 28. So it's quite a varied tolerance there, so as long as we're in between those, I'm happy. Okay, so I've got the first one here set up. As you can see, the cam lobes are at the top, so we measure the bottom between the shim and the bottom of the cam lobe. So I'm going to check a couple, and then I'm not going to bore you throughout the whole video me checking all the valve clearances, so I'll just do a couple, see where we're at, and then I'll just get on with it. Right, so we're going to check the inlet side first. So I've got the minimum and the maximum, which is 0.08 and 0.18. That's the only two I need, because we just want to make sure that we're in between these two tolerances. This one's already too tight, which is not great news. I didn't really want to strip this today, but it's got to be right. So point 8 doesn't go in, so we're going to go next one down. We've just about got 0.06 in there, so it is quite a bit tight, so we'll manage that one. I'm just going to check the others. Again, 0.8 to 18. So it's within tolerance. Within tolerance. So they're all within tolerance apart from this second one here. I'm just going to spin the engine over a couple of times and just double check that. No, definitely tight. Okay, I'll check the exhaust and then we'll come back to that later. You can see from the front side how much easier it is to do valve clearances when there's no radiator in the way. Okay, all the exhaust ones are within tolerance now, so it's just one valve we've got to adjust. So it's a lot of work just for one valve, but it's got to be done. So we can see inside here, just about, there's this little, like a tooth just sitting out on the side of the casing. If I get around, we can see that there's a line up here. So we need to get that line lined up with this tab on the side of the casing. That would be our timing mark. And then on the camshafts, if we have a look, we can see there's some numbers and arrows. They're not all relevant, but once we've got this set up, this could actually be 180 degrees out once we set it up, so we've just got to make sure that number one lobe is up firing, and then we'll see where these marks line up. So I'm just going to show you my take data here, what I'm trying to achieve, because it's quite difficult to see. So this is the line, obviously in the image it's highlighted in black, so it's a lot easier to see, and this is the pin we're lining it up with. If I go to the next image, and this is what we're trying to achieve with the camshaft. So over here, where my mouse is 1, that lines up directly with the edge of the cylinder head, and then we've got 2 and 3 going up. Behind this cylinder head here, there is actually a number 2, but that's irrelevant. We're not using that. So as you can see, the chain tensioner at the top here, these point just on the inside of both edges. There are no marks here to correspond to, but they're vertically up. So we're back at the bike, so we can see number 3 is going up just inside of that tensioner guide. It's very difficult to see here. Let's try my torch. Okay, just about see 2 there, and I think you can see 1 down there. There you go, 1 down there. And the markings are lined up in there as well. Okay, so now I need to undo this tensioner here, slacken the chain off, remove this guide, and then unbolt all the camshafts, camshaft bolts, get the intake shaft out, get the bucket out, measure the shim, calculate what we need, put another shim in there, and get it back together. Okay, I'm over at the bench now. So here's our little shim. I've got a vernier here and a micrometer. This is reasonably accurate, but not as accurate as a micrometer. So I'm going to use this, just going to zero it up. Just want to see how wide it is. So it's just under 7.5 millimeters wide. So I've got my 7.5 mil shim kit here. There's 2 boxes. The width is important to get the shim box out, but it's the thickness that we need to measure. And although I can get a reasonable reading out of this, sometimes these even have the size written on the back of them. And this one is 162. So the gap was tight, so to make the gap bigger I need to go smaller, so the bucket needs to go lower so we can get underneath that cam lobe. So 0.06 is what we got there. 0.08 was a minimum, but I don't want to set this to the minimum, so I'm going to go between 0.08 and 0.18. So if I find a happy medium somewhere there, we're good. It saves me putting it in and out twice, just trying to get close to the minimum. So 162. So we'll see if this gives us 162. It's floating between 162 and 163. So reasonably accurate, but this is more accurate. So if there was no numbers on there, then I would definitely use this. So what's 162 means is it's 1.62 millimeters thick. They don't put a point on there because there's not enough room to put more characters in there. So 162. So we're at 1.62. So if I go down to 160, that will make it 0.8 because I'm going smaller to make the gap bigger. That will put me on the minimum. If I go to 1.55, that'll take me to 0.15, which is dead in between 0.8 and 0.18. So I'm going to use 1.55. Confusing myself here. Okay, so 1.55. So we'll dump that in there. Don't throw the old one away. I'll go back in the box because there's nothing wrong with it. I will head upstairs and put this back, put the camshaft in and see if our gap's correct. So when we took the bucket out, the shim was stuck in the bottom there with a film of oil. Now it's all loose, rattling around. If we flip this over, it will just drop out. So we need to stick this in first on top of the valve. Then put the bucket back in. So we've got to stick the camshaft in, timed up. So this is the only one we're going to be checking because it's the only one we've adjusted. I'm only going to torque this side down to the specified torque. Now people moan to leave comments on my YouTube channel that I do not give torque settings. I will never give torque settings. Every vehicle is different and torque settings can vary. So I will never ever give you a torque setting. As much as people moan on there, it's your responsibility to get the correct information for your vehicle. So I'm going to torque these out to the specified torque that's set in my manual And if you're going to do this to yours, I would suggest you look it up and get the right settings that match yours. Last thing I need is someone to break a bolt, talking it up and saying Mel gave me a torque figure, it was too much and I broke a bolt. So I never give torque settings. It's something you're going to have to get used to, I'm afraid, watching my channel. Okay, so this is the tensioner. When the spring's in there, when the spring's in there, it pushes out. Also uses oil pressure as well to force itself out when the bike's running. To release it, just take it off, pull this little gear back. But to undo this, it's a lot harder on the table trying to hold it and undo it, so you always undo it on the bike. Just crack it off. Once you've got it off, you can unscrew it. So now it's released, back to the stop. We'll drop that in. As we push the spring in, it will adjust itself up, and as you turn it round, wherever there's a slack point, it will readjust itself to where it needs to be. Okay. It always goes in last, so now we need to put this back in, because if you put the spring on now, this will not go back. 0.13, so we're dead in the middle, so the maths was right. Okay, everything's back together. Shimming's done, timing's right, tensioner's back in, all the bolts are torqued. Now these centre bolts, 4 on each side, now the camshafts are fed through tiny drillings that feed oil to the camshaft to lubricate them. Now in the centre here we have rubber O-rings that go in there. They're there, on top of the cam, they're the cam cover. Now the spark plugs are in those holes. Now as the oil pressure comes up, you can see these bolts on the outside don't have washers on them. The inside ones have copper washers on them. Now they're sealing washers. I've never ever had them leak, but this bike's going to Spain. It's going to be 4 days on track. It's going to be near 17,000 RPM flat out. So the last thing I need is for any oil ingress to end up in these plug holes. So I'm going to pull these bolts out. I'm going to change all the copper washers, torque them down again, and then get the cam cover on. Okay, time for the cam cover to go on. Now these things float around, so I'm hoping that they're going to line up in the grooves. I was going to take them off, but they hook in underneath this breather pack. so I won't be able to get it back on there either. So they're going to stay as they are. I can get my finger in through the holes and hopefully wiggle those till they pop into the right place. Now these half moon ends are always silicone the corners and the half moons, otherwise they may end up leaking. I never replace these gaskets on any bike that we do. It's very, very rare. They never leak. Well, they seldom leak. If they're soft and pliable, then go back on again. If they're rock hard like plastic, then yes, you've got to change them. But these are fine, so they're going to go back on. Just going to use some silicone to do the half moons. Okay, so I need to get the cables back onto the throttle body, but before I do that, there's going to be some upgrades on this. I'm changing the levers on both sides. I've got Domino quick grips, so I'm going to put that one on that side. I've got a horrible feeling that I may have to get rid of the switch pack, which I really don't want to do. I'll see if this grip fits into this original one. If it doesn't, then I'm going to have to either abort for today. I've still got loads to do on it. It's Saturday, it's what, 3 o'clock. This is being loaded on Monday between 10 and 1 onto the lorry. It's a bank holiday weekend, and if I come here for another day, my wife's going to kill me. Let me try these grips. Just going back to these valve clearances, you can get this cam cover off without having to take all the front stuff off, but to be fair, it's made life so much easier. This plastic is a bugger to get out. This bracket you couldn't get out until this plastic was out, so I couldn't get the plastic out because the radiator was in the way and so forth. I really struggled to get this cover on and off. I don't know if you can see right down in the corner there, there's a slight overweld, and it was just enough to catch the corner of this cam cover. Right, let me try these grips. If they don't work, then I can just put it back together and not worry about that this time. But I can't just put it back together because I've got to repair this wiring down here that I showed earlier. This one here, the broken wire. And I need to get that on there because I'm sure that's for the power commander. I got a feeling that was broken last year, but there's no light on the dashboard saying there was an issue. But when I was coming to the end of the straight at Almeria, I was applying throttle. It was like a massive dead spot. I had no idea what was happening, and all of a sudden it would launch into life, making it quite an unpleasant experience when the machine just launches itself into life. Anyway, so we'll fix that and then we'll see if that cures the problem. Well, I was about to put the plugs in. Just gone over to my shelf, and there's 3 spark plugs on the shelf. There's an alternative, which is an iridium one, and I had 4 of those. Brilliant. So if I put these in, I'll never have to take them out again, not for a long time anyway. So that'll be in and job done for a long time. Okay, going to put the plugs in. I'm going to use a dab of ceramic grease on these. Just a small amount, just stops it from seizing in there and causing all sorts of problems. Right guys, I'm going to call it a day there. It's half an hour into just valve clearances on this video, and I was days on this thing, so I've still got try and get the Domino throttle on there, I've still got to try and get the clutch cable on there, thermostat on there, put the radiator back together, still tyres to do, so there's still a lot of prep work. So I don't want you to go away thinking there's not any more of this, but there will be, so stay tuned for part 2, possibly 3, maybe even 4, well, we'll see how far this goes. Again, when we get to Almeria, there'll still be footage of me doing stuff out there, and stick around because something eventful happens when we're over in Almeria, so stick around for that. Anyway guys, thanks for tuning in, subscribe so you don't miss the other ones, and I'll see you next time. Take care guys.